Hello, my name is Dennis, and welcome to my trailer park white trash mobile home kitchen. I really do live in a mobile home, in a trailer park, and this is my kitchen. Today I want to make one of my favorite meals, linguine with clam sauce. I got the idea for this recipe when I was taking an Italian cooking course. And in one class we used shallots, and I had never worked with shallots before. So I decided I really need to know how to work with the flavor of shallots. And one of the ways I have of doing that is tasting them and getting them in the mind and thinking, where can I use that flavor? I don't know if you can hear that. That's a plane going overhead. Once again, I live near the airport, trailer park. So I bought some shallots, a whole bunch of shallots. I sliced one up, cooked it in a little bit of oil, and tasted it thinking, where can I use this flavor? Put it in the trash. That's the only thing I could come up with. It was awful. It was just awful. I threw everything away, and then a day or two later, I'm looking at all of these shallots that I had bought, wondering, what am I going to do with these things? Because I didn't like the flavor of the cooked shallots. And then I got the idea, caramelize them. Because I caramelize onions all the time and store them in my freezer. I'll caramelize 10 pounds of onions and then just package them up into small amounts, put them in the freezer. So again, I sliced up a shallot, cooked it in oil, but this time long enough to it reached a golden brown color, a nice dark color where it was really well caramelized. And then I tasted that. Ah, that's a flavor that would go well with the flavor of clams. And that's how I came up with, or at least the beginning of how I came up with my recipe for linguine with clam sauce. So let me get into the ingredients for making linguine with clam sauce. These are the ingredients I use when I make linguine with clam sauce. Shallots, if you're not familiar with shallots, this is what shallots look like. They sort of look like large garlic, and they sort of look like onions. The flavor is supposedly halfway between garlic and onions. I don't know if I agree with that, but you need one fairly large shallot. This is actually kind of small. I figure about 3 ounces, a shallot weighing about 3 ounces. As I mentioned, I caramelize things and put them in the freezer, so this is about a 3-ounce shallot that's been caramelized. And you can see how dark that is compared to, say, the white color of the garlic. That's the difference in color as you get this down to when it's caramelized. I caramelized a whole bunch of these, put them in little plastic packs of about 3 ounce, what would be equivalent to a 3-ounce shallot, and then stored them in the freezer. Now whenever I want to make linguine with clam sauce, I've got them in the refrigerator. And then for the clams, I buy canned clams. If you want to use whole, fresh clams, cook those. The way I portion these out is I don't buy the canned clams in the grocery store. I buy the big institutional can in the warehouse store, and then I portion these down again into plastic packs that I freeze of about 5 ounces of clam meat and about 5 ounces by weight of clam juice. That's equivalent to 1 10-ounce can of clams that you're going to find in the grocery store. And then a clove of garlic, about a half a teaspoon of oregano flake, and then about a 1/4 teaspoon of fresh ground black pepper. I'm just going to basically grate some fresh pepper into it. This is about a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil, 3 or 4 basil leaves. These basil leaves are kind of large. I'm probably going to use only about 3 of these. You can just tear these up with your fingers when you're ready to use them, or julienne them with a sharp knife. I have some homemade fresh pasta dough to make my linguine. If you want to, you can just as easily use the linguine you buy in the store and cook that according to package directions. What I have here is about enough pasta dough for 2 to 3 people. So basically double these portions if you're going to be serving 6 people. I figure about 2 eggs and enough flour to make the dough, and that's enough dough for 2 to 3 people depending on how large a portion. And then about half a cup of homemade spaghetti sauce. Any marinara sauce is actually going to be fine. This isn't going to be the highlight of the dish. Really, the clams and the shallots are going to be the highlights. So I think of this as just a vehicle along with the pasta to get the flavors to the mind. So half a cup is fine for for this amount of linguine with clam sauce. So those are the ingredients that I use when I make my linguine with clam sauce. If you're not familiar with how to julienne basil, just stack your leaves up one on top of the other and then just roll this up into a little cylinder like so. Then using a very sharp knife, you want to cut tiny strings of the basil leaves. That's julienne. If you go really, really tiny, like a 1/16 of an inch, that's chiffonade. But for julienne, just go about 1/8 of an inch. Once you get going, you can just chop these up relatively quickly. And there it is. That's julienne basil leaves. To start caramelizing my onions, I have a skillet heated on the stove. I'm going to use about a tablespoon of olive oil in there. This is just pure olive oil. I call this cooking olive oil. This is not the extra virgin olive oil. Now I'm going to run my shallots in there. And with a wooden spoon, just start stirring these. It's going to take about 10 minutes to caramelize these. And the color will change from this white, pinkish white of the shallots to a golden brown color. I'll show you that when these are all cooked. I want you to see the color of these now that they've been caramelized. These are not cooked until they're brown crisp. In fact, once in a while I added maybe a couple of tablespoons of water just to cool it down a little bit. And that instantly steaming water would also help to soften and cook the shallots. But you can see what a nice dark brown color that is. Those are caramelized shallots. I'm going to start assembling my sauce here. I've returned my shallots to the pan. I'm crushing in that clove of garlic. And then I'm going to add a little bit of my clam juice from the clams to the pan to deglaze the pan and help cook the garlic, the crushed garlic. Let this go for about a minute. Oh, and by the way, when I caramelized the shallots, I don't know if I mentioned the heat. I kept the heat at about medium, and occasionally I would move it down to medium low if I thought the pan was getting too hot, but for the most part, the shallots were caramelized at medium heat. I'm going to add my clams now, and what I want to do, I'm going to have my heat at high. I want to concentrate that clam juice because that's going to help to flavor my sauce. I've just about finished concentrating my clam broth in this pan. Other flavors, if you want to experiment with them, that you could add to the pan, you could add alcohol, such as a small amount of white wine, dry sherry, marsala, vermouth. That would add more complexity to the sauce. Since I'm going to be using a red pasta sauce to bring this all together, you could even add a small amount of red wine. I would be more inclined to do the whiter alcohols. All right, so this is just about concentrated. I can tell by the sound too. Rather than having that hissing, boiling sound, it's starting to get a sizzling sound because the water is almost gone. So now I'm going to add my oregano. I'm putting in the extra virgin olive oil at this point because I want the flavor. I'm not using it as a frying oil. few grinds of black pepper. Cook that for about a minute. And that's just basically going to hydrate the dried oregano leaves and get the flavor of that and the pepper into the sauce. And then my last step is to work in my marinara sauce. Stir that in. Okay, I don't need to cook that at this point, it's all done. What I do need to do is make my pasta next. I'm a big fan of homemade pasta, so much so that at one time I made it so much that I bought a motor for my pasta machine. It's kind of loud, so I don't know how well you're going to be able to hear me when I'm talking about making the pasta. I'll pause when I need to in between. My first step is to get my pasta flattened down. I did attach to my pasta machine my linguini attachment. That's a linguini cutter. There's my fresh pasta dough. I have some flour in a duster here that I'll be using a lot. My first step here is just to kind of get this flattened down with my hands. And then I'm going to run it through my rollers here. If you want to know how to make pasta dough, on the website, in the recipe archive right now, is a recipe for making pasta from scratch. I'm using my dial here on the side to set these rollers closer and closer together. This is what's going to flatten out my pasta. I'm going to go down to about the number 4 setting. Number 1 is the widest setting, 4 is the closest setting, and that should give me pasta that's thin enough to go through my linguini cutters. All right, that's kind of long. Obviously, I don't want to cut my linguini 4 feet long or 5 feet long, however long that is. It's about 4 feet, I think. So I'm going to cut this shorter before I run it through the linguini cutter. So here are my sheets of pasta. These are about ready to be cut into linguini. Move my motor over to the linguini cutter. And then just feed the pasta through the cutter. And there's my linguini. So I'm going to finish cutting the rest of this. I have water on the stove that's coming up to the boil. We're getting close to having our linguini and clam sauce ready to eat. My water has come up to a rapid boil here. So I'm going to put my linguini in there. Because this is fresh pasta, This is going to cook in only 2 to 3 minutes. And then once this is cooked, I'm going to drain it, put it on a plate, and add my clam sauce. Okay, we are ready to start assembling here. I have my pasta drained. I lightly oiled this so that it wouldn't stick. Put a generous scoop of our sauce on top. And you can, if you want, garnish this with Romano cheese. I like to garnish it with a little bit of julienne basil. And then drizzle some extra virgin olive oil over the top. I think this is better than using cheese. Linguine with clam sauce. I want you to take a moment to appreciate how that looks. I'm going to add a couple of slices of focaccia that I made yesterday. And what can I say? That is linguine with clam sauce. I think it's delicious. I used to eat this every Sunday. No cooking video would be complete without the look of rapture on my face as I am tasting my linguine with clam sauce. Oh, that looks so good. Absolutely delicious. What can I add to that? Make this when you get a chance. You will, hopefully you will enjoy it as much as I do. Oh. For a printable PDF copy of this recipe with step-by-step photographs, visit the White Trash Cooking website and look on the home page or in the recipe archive.